Okay, welcome everyone here in person or in virtual person, and those of you who are watching the recording. Um, Tonight we're going to take a look back at the year, um, what we did, um, what fun we had, what books we ended up reading, and then we'll look at next year and what books we have in store, some additional classes. I think I was just showing the new schedule to Rachel and Tonya, and it looked kind of like filled out. There's a lot there, um, and uh, and we'll talk about other little things towards the end, like maybe some summer camp stuff, um, and I think that's it. And we'll save logistics, any kind of logistical questions like registration type of stuff, towards the very end, so that if do more content of the literature stuff um, towards the beginning. And I'm hoping to, what time is it now? It's 10:05 p.m. on the East Coast. Wrap up in 40 minutes. I think we could do that. I think we could do that. And Arena, I see, looking forward to hearing about the junior high literature course. Also interested in learning about the writing workshop and the art appreciation courses. Okay, yeah. And those of you that have filled out that survey, thank you so much. That schedule survey, thank you so much for filling that out. If you haven't done so yet, please do so. I'll send out that link again. I don't know if you might have the link there in front of you, but if you want to multitask, feel free to do that. That's going to help us solidify or make decisions about the schedule. Okay, so looking back, I'll start off, and then Rachel and Tonya will share some of what's happened over the year with them. So high school class, and I feel like I've got to continually, I want to continually remind about the grade levels, because high school usually traditionally is like 9th through 12th grade, but we divided things up into 3-year segments. So grade level for high school were 10th through 12th, and then the junior high 7th through 9th, and the upper elementary 4th through 6th. The lower elementary will be a little bit different. Okay. Welcome, Sonia. Just getting started on a look back. So the books that we read so far this year: Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, The Crucible, The Scarlet Letter, Ibsen's An Enemy of the People, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, The Great Gatsby, and I've got 2 other books here, and I have not announced these to the high school students yet, because right now they're doing poetry, and they'll be giving poetry presentations on poems by Robert Frost and Edna St. Vincent Millay. They're picking out poems, and then tomorrow in class they're going to decide on which ones they want to present, and then next week they're giving presentations. And the books that we're going to read next are going to be 2 fairy tales: George Orwell's Animal Farm and Edmond Rostand's Chanticleer. And Kira, you might recognize the name Edmond Rostand. He's the one that wrote Cyrano de Bergerac. So they both take place on farms, but probably very different from each other. So you get a little bit of a sneak peek, Kira, into what we're doing towards the end of the year. I want to talk a little bit about how this course has changed this year, and I've changed my conception of it. I'm calling it a seminar now, and those of you that are in the high school class and high school parents know that, but the junior high parents who might be going up, who might be interested in the high school class for their students, there are some big differences between the high school class and the junior high class that I want to stress here. One is we've got a model where we're all in video and we're heightening the interaction with each other. And as a year goes forward in the high school class, the content of the course is created by the students. So in the junior high class, I'm creating the content, the questions, that's the main content, the questions, the challenge questions, or the writing assignments. For the high school students, they start creating the content. So to give you a few examples of that, there are a lot of writing assignments, and those writing assignments become talking points. So for example, with Fahrenheit 451, there's a choice of 2 writing assignments to do. One, there's a lot of choices you get in the high school class too. One was, draw a portrait of Millie and a portrait of Clarice, 2 very different characters from each other. and explain their fundamental differences that you capture in a portrait. So a few students did that, and we spent time doing character analysis using their portraits and their descriptions. And the other option was to take the ideas or from Fahrenheit 451 and see how they might apply to today. And there was a lot of discussion that was generated from that. Another way in which the students are starting to drive more the content is, for example, when we did The Fountainhead, which we spent 2 months on, it's a long novel. The students would write their own chapter titles and bring in quotes. So if we had chapters 5 through 10 to read, I'd get a bunch of chapter titles, and chapter titles are a lovely way of condensing your understanding of what's going on in a story. And so they were communicating that. And then if there were differences in chapter titles, we talk about that. And then the quotes that they would have, they would share why that was something that was important. A couple of other differences in the high school class are that, there's a lot more one-on-one interaction with me and interaction with the other students. So 2 weeks during the school year, we take those weeks off from formal classes and we have a one-on-one tutorial. So last time we did that, it was in preparation for a poetry presentation. We're doing a lot more, and this is something that I'd like to do more of even next year, a lot more of students speaking to each other and listening closely to what they have to say to each other. In the junior high class, I want to encourage students to have thoughts and opinions and to share those and to fill up the highlights board with their reactions to story. I still want them to do that in the high school class, but in the high school class, I also want them, and I'm starting to see that I want them to listen to each other, especially when we have pretty controversial works of literature like The Crucible or The Fountainhead, where there might be a division of opinions. High school students are coming to class with ideas that they have started to get from the culture, that they are seen as a part of themselves, and that they are testing those ideas out. And that's wonderful and great. And I think I want that to give that opportunity, but I also want them to have the opportunity to be able to listen carefully to what someone else says. And so we're creating opportunities to make that happen. Okay, I spent a lot of time there with the high school class. I'll give an opportunity for any questions, but if you have questions as I'm going along or as we're going along, feel free to put those in the chat if you feel like you might forget. So if you just came on, we're just doing a quick review of what we've been doing and going backwards chronologically. So junior high class, To Kill a Mockingbird. That's such a lovely novel. Shane, Inherit the Wind, the Stokes Monkey Trial. And we spent 3 months on Les Miserables. What a tome. What a roller coaster. But I think the students, I got to say something. One student wrote a poem about how much suffering they went through in reading Les Miserables. That was so confusing, and as all kinds of things going on. I'm so glad that they wrote a poem about that. Jack, you know who it is. Don't say anything. But it was a wonderful experience. And we did something unexpected. I threw in some O. Henry short stories. And the O. Henry short stories tied in nicely with Les Miserables, actually. There's a short story that O. Henry wrote called The Retrieved Reformer that is essentially a short story about based on the same premise as Jean Valjean from Les Miserables, the escaped convict trying to become a good person. We did one Nathaniel Hawthorne story, the Young Goodman Brown, and the next work of literature that we're going to do is A Doll's House. Oh, is that right, Maria? Mm. Les Miserables was abridged, partially abridged. I taught many years ago a 200-page version of Les Miserables, and I'm never ever going to do that to myself or to my students again. Original, of course, like 1,500 pages. This was an 800-page version. So it took out most of the chunks of the big essays that Victor Hugo likes to write. Like, here's the history of Waterloo in 50 pages. So that's the literature class. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the writing workshop, because I think some of you have expressed some interest in that, and just to give you a sense of how the writing workshop ties into the literature class. So in the writing workshop, we do some writing in the junior high, but not extensive. In the writing workshop, we do the kind of writing that if we had more time, we would do. So it's the writing workshop is doing writing that's connected to the literature. Give you some examples of things we did. So we do both kind of creative and nonfiction writing. So for To Kill a Mockingbird, students wrote their own chapter. To Kill a Mockingbird is pretty episodic with a similar kind of theme throughout of don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, I'm so trite there. But that they look more closely at something you thought, don't presume. And so the students wrote their own chapter with Scout and Jem and with that same kind of theme. They also, for Les Miserables, one thing that they did was they picked out an artwork that they thought made them think of a scene or character from Les Miserables, and created a presentation that they delivered to the literature class. So I got the day off. You know, Jack, you're there. Jack, you gave a presentation. That was good. I didn't have to do anything that class. The students gave presentations. The writing workshop students gave presentations to the literature students. And then most recently, there are all kinds related to Les Miserables. There are all kinds of storylines in Les Miserables. And so what we did was we did something that O. Henry did. O. Henry takes the Jean Valjean storyline, creates his own short story. Well, we looked at the Eponine storyline, or we looked at the Thénardier storyline, or the Fantine storyline, took that premise, and the students wrote their own short story based on the premise. So their own little version of a similar Les Miserables story. So that's the gist, a lot of the stuff that we did there. Okay, I'm going to move forward now to Mrs. Miner and Mrs. Fingerhut. I've been talking for so long that I haven't even introduced you to. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, so looking back at our upper elementary year, so we did Fever 93, which was definitely one of those that starts the year with a bit of intensity, because this is about a fever that takes place outside of Philadelphia in 1793 and is very intense. We did The Witch of Blackbird Pond, which is earlier 1600s. We did Carry On Mr. Bowditch, which is 1700s. And then we got what so far has been the class favorite unanimously. People have voted for Anne of Green Gables. They loved Anne. Very, very episodic, but super engaging characters. And also some of the highlights of the year so far as writing assignments, because everybody wrote their own kind of Anne scene or Anne chapter. And I'm still like picturing Sir Froggington coming into the, Amarilla's response. And there were just so many delights. So we loved Anne. And then we did Tom Sawyer, which was a bit of a, some people loved and some people didn't, but also had to deal some with the racism topic. And what we've been just getting into is the K, which also has some issues with racism in a really kind of personal way. And so we're going to be looking at how that works. But the K is set in the 1940s in World War II. And so we've really, really, really come forward. And then we got some choices. We're going to see. We've been, we always customize classes, right? Like what's going to work for this group of students to be most engaging, most, to most captivate them. And we do talk about when a student doesn't like a book, like, what can you learn from like not liking the book? Because that can be really educational. What exactly don't you like? What does that tell you about the books that you do like? But that said, we always try to, do some customizing for classes. So we haven't quite decided what's next. We're looking at some other choices. I can say perhaps one of them is going to be Indian in the Cupboard. So that is what we've been up to so far. Definitely heavy on really early as far as the American history themed, we should say, year, right? Because we have our themes, but we don't mean that it has to fit that. So as far as the American history year, it's kind of been a little bit heavy on the early side, and now we're getting a little bit more into this others. And we've done a lot of poems, a lot of really delightful engagement in memorizing and reciting poems. And one of the things that that I did for the first time, because normally we say this is the poem we're going to match with this book because it has some kind of similarity in theme. But one of the things that I did this time was give a choice of poems for Tom Sawyer, and we had some really interesting choices to, that the students thought this matches, Tom Sawyer, and they got to tell us why, and then share what piece of the poem they had memorized. And one other piece that we did as a four class like mini unit right before break was The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, which was super, super fun. And we drew a lot of pictures, and students drew their own pictures to really help kind of develop the imagery, so that by the end, when they read this poem, they could really see everything happen as he's writing and he's waiting for the lights, and one if by land and two if by sea. It was super, super engaging and thrilling. So we've been having an awesome year, a lot of fun. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Fingerhut, who has been leading the writing workshop for this course.
Hello. So I've been doing the writing workshop with the students every Thursday, and I'll just give you kind of some of the writing I do is expository, where Ms. Miner will give an assignment usually related to personal experience from the student will share some kind of personal experience that resembles something in the story, and I'll help them with those assignments in class. And then there's the creative ones. So let me share with you some of those. When they're reading Yellow Fever, I had the students study a poem. We looked at the rhyming scheme. We talked about the rhythm of the poem, and they made their own version of using that pattern using that poem as a model and using Yellow Fever for the content. Some of them wrote very serious poems. Some of them wrote very playful poems. It was really a lot of fun to share them with each other, and then they would underline parts that they thought were interesting or engaging. For around Halloween, I had them study a Norman Rockwell painting, and they started a story with that. And then I had, for the second part of the story, now bring in a character from the Witch of Blackbird Pond, if you have one of those characters come and visit the home. Now, this is a story that took place during the Puritan days. So what would that person think about the trick-or-treaters and the candy? So that was an interesting story for the students to share and write about. The Carry On with Mr. Bowditch, they did a scene that relates to a misunderstanding between a student and teacher that happens to the main character. And so they wrote their own scene. I just provided some pictures of different classrooms and just talked about what would it be like to stand in that classroom? What would you see? What would you notice? What subjects are interesting to you that you want to have be the misunderstanding about? They really enjoyed doing those kinds of assignments. Also, I had them read a poem called about Columbus, and it's not obvious what the meaning is. So we just took some time to read each stanza. What did it mean? And then translate what it meant in prose. And that's an exercise that some literature teachers do with their students, and I really enjoy doing that with them. I even had them listen to music and kind of describe what does this music remind you of in relation to the poem or the story. It had a seafaring element to the music. I was surprised with how much some of the students seemed to really respond very well to that. I got that trick from Mr. Travers, by the way. They loved Anne of Green Gables and writing about that scene. Now with Tom Sawyer, I had something interesting happen. So Rachel also opened up the floor to let the students pick what kind of writing assignment they wanted to do. And like, for example, they chose to write about how they were like Tom and not like Tom. That was like one example. So I helped them with those kind of assignments. And then we had time, so I did something else. And I took this idea of a token story. Tom convinces everybody around him to give him a token to paint the fence. You remember that scene? So they were supposed to take a token. I gave them a picture of some tokens, pick one, give it some kind of power, make a chant for it, and create your story. It could be fantasy, it could be historical, it could be futuristic. Oh, and they loved doing that. That was a lot of fun reading those stories. And then we still had more time, and they took pictures of their own tokens, sent them to me, and I posted their tokens on the screen, and we wrote stories about their tokens. And then we compared our stories with the students' stories. So that was just a really fun, engaging lesson to have the students. They just really opened up, and they just really enjoyed talking about their little tokens. Tokens are just so common for children. So that was a lot of fun. So we're currently doing, the writing is once a week. The writing workshop is once a week. And what we're currently doing is they're writing a story related to the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. They're writing their own Midnight Ride. So they have to decide what world they want their story to take place. Is it going to be futuristic? Is it going to be fantasy? Is it going to be historical? They have to have something bad that happens. They have to think of a metaphor. They have to think of some kind of foreshadowing, just like the poem has these things. What kind of signal are they going to include? So it's kind of a complex story. And so their assignment right now is to submit 3 pictures, 3 images that kind of represent their story. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow and kind of think about metaphors and imagery and create their story. So I think that gives you an idea of some of the assignments I have done this year for the writing workshop.
Thank you, Tonya. And then Sean is also asking, how much writing would you say you're doing every week?
So usually the assignment is about 1 or 2 paragraphs. So that's about what's expected.
And I'll ask
or
a follow-up.
1 to 3 stanzas, something like that.
I'll ask a follow-up question to that. Is all the writing done in class, or is there an expectation to have writing done outside of class?
I try to get them started in class, so they feel like they're on a roll, and hopefully, there's going to be some who finish right away. Some of them are done in class, and some of them need more time. So I give them the rest of the week to turn in their work. So whatever you can do in class with me, great, but you have the rest of the week to finish if you need it.
All right. Thank you, Tonya. I'm going to share with you one more quick class. I'm not going to spend much time on this one, and that is a new class that we added this year, which is Elementary Art Appreciation. And so this has been a really fun experience for me. Grades 1 through 6. So 6-year-olds and 12-year-olds in the same class. We've been doing a lot of artworks where we're learning to read the story in the artwork, learn to read the visual story. And then we've just started doing a little bit of art history, a little bit, looking at different time periods and why different time periods create art like this. Paleolithic people, why did they draw horses inside of caves? So that's a little bit of the elementary art appreciation. Any questions, overall questions about this past year? we'll get into looking ahead at books and so forth in just a moment, but I want to make sure that there are no questions now about what we've done this past year.
Did you end up doing writing workshop for middle school or the junior high? Because it sounds like that was mainly upper L, and it sounds like you don't really do it for the high schoolers because you're already doing a lot of writing there, right?
Yeah, correct. So yeah, so Tonya does the upper L writing workshop. I've done the junior high writing workshop. So the writing assignments I described, like the paragraph or the chapter from To Kill a Mockingbird, or the presentation, the art presentation, those were done by the writing workshop students and not the junior high students. And we'll have both of those workshops again in the fall. Thanks. Any other questions? And you're right, we don't have the writing workshop for the high school students because there is an expectation of a lot more writing, a lot more responsibility on their part. All right, let's look at next year. And I'm going to call, so right now we're at 10:30. We're going to try to keep this to, let's say 10, 15 minutes. we're going to start reverse order. Antonia, shall we start with you with the lower elementary literature class? We are introducing a new literature class. All right, Tonya, tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, I'd love to. So my goal for this class is to find works that are readable for this age level while still being very engaging. And I wanted to start the year with the Tales from the Odyssey. These are the books written by Mary Pope Osborne. She wrote the Magic Treehouse books, great books for developing the reading fluency. And my hope is that the students have that level of fluency before they start, so that they can read books like this. Something about the Greek heroes, the Greek myths are very engaging for students of all ages. So it's a nice place to start. The next book I have in mind, Adventures of Greek Heroes, just other Greek heroes that are really fun to learn about. We have Hercules and we have Theseus and we have Orpheus in this book. And it's just really a lot of fun to read. Now this one, we're really getting into a more novel style book, The Triumph for Flavius. Now this is a story about a Roman boy whose father is a soldier. He wins a battle and brings the spoils home and awards his son with a Greek slave. So it's a story about a relationship between the Roman boy and his slave, who is a Greek man. And very, very touching, enduring story that I think the students would really love and would be appropriate for this age level. Fa Mulan, I'm keeping an eye out. I would love to find a poem about Fa Mulan and use that. So I'm keeping an eye out for something that could be used as a poem. It's another great story. Now, The Kite Fighters is the story about two brothers. And this is from a time where culture is very strong. You know, the traditions are very strong. The older child acts a certain way, the younger child acts a certain way. And the king in the story is a child. He's the same age as the boys. And there's a lot of interesting things that happen between the brothers and the king and between the two brothers themselves, and how they handle culture, the traditions of the family, and how they're able to move out and not feel trapped by these traditions, but are able to grow. And it's a very, very cute story about the brothers and the competition of the kites. It's a really interesting, adventurous game that they play. Then I have two books on Vikings. This one's more fantastical, the saga of Eric the Viking, and this one is more like a historical fiction. So if we have time to read both, we will, but if not, I'll be reading one of those. And then at the end of the year, I'd like to read these are more modern day fictional stories. The Cricket of Times Square is a story about a cricket from the country who ends up in the city, and he has an Orpheus moment. So I thought this would be a good book to include in this list because of Orpheus from earlier. And woo, the kids would be excited to let me know that Orpheus moment. And if you're familiar with The Trumpet of the Swan, it's much more of a novel. I think it'd be rewarding to be able to read this at the end of the year because it really, really is a novel. It's great for young children. And it also has an Orpheus-like element to it because, you know, if you know the story, Lewis can't speak and he loves somebody and he has to find a way to communicate to the person he loves. So there's a bit of romance in this book, but it's very appropriate for the level of a young student. So that's my plan for next year, provided we have enough interest. So I think this would be an engaging, fun class. So that's what I have to say.
Okay, Tonya, a couple quick, I should have set you up a little bit better and set up the whole year a little bit better. So first of all, next year is our ancient history year, where a lot of the works that we're going to pick are going to be tied to that in some way. And then and the lower elementary class is geared towards 2nd, 3rd grade. That's correct, right?
Yes.
And then Sean is asking if you see any kind of big difference between what the upper elementary is like versus the lower elementary. What would you focus on in the lower elementary that you might not focus on in the upper elementary?
I think they'll both be very similar. I might do a little more reading aloud from time to time, just depending on the pace. You know, sometimes I get a class who they're really on the ball and they're able to read pretty well, and other times I kind of need to help them. So that's the only thing I'm not sure about just yet. But basically the same format. I would do discussions. I might do some reading aloud. The only thing that might be a little different for me, oh, and there'll be some writing. There'll be some writing involved, and there'll be some. I would do the poems in between the books, and possibly while we're doing the poems, do some writing. So if we have a few days, 2 days to do the poem, 2 days to do writing a paragraph together. I would probably be a little more in hands-on with the actual writing with the students. Maybe with the goal that they can do it a little more independently by the end of the year. We'll see how that works out. But that would be something I would really want to make sure they feel comfortable writing full sentences, getting comfortable with writing a paragraph by the end of the year.
All right, and Tonya, is it correct that the size of the class you're expecting would be a smaller group than the upper elementary would be?
I would like for it to be about 5 or 6 students, no more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we have more kids, just break up the class and do 2 sessions. That's my goal.
All right, great. Thank you, Tonya. Okay, so next up, going in order here.
Yeah.
And let me get you a pen.
I hear Mariana too. All right. So next year, continuing with the ancient history theme, right? That's kind of what we're talking about. We start the year usually with the Golden Goblet. Like I said, we do differentiate. So this is our thought process. And I have taught this whole year before, as well as experienced this whole year before. And this is a bit of an intense book to start the year, which has its pros and its cons. I think it's obviously a net pro. That's why we do it. It is really, really different. This is set in ancient Egypt. And if you don't like someone who's your subordinate, you are like allowed and expected that you can beat them up. So we do have some conversations with like, let's take a deep breath and like, you know, picture we are at a little bit of a different time period, right? But it is incredibly engaging. A really, really fun book to start the year with. We also will do Greek myths. We also will do Anne of Byzantium, which is a really interesting book for thinking you're going one direction and winding up going a totally different one. So that tends to students who have read a lot of books, and they're like, well, I know how these kinds of stories go. Start reading Anne of Byzantium and like, well, I got it. And it's like, whoa, no, you don't. It goes somewhere totally different, which is extra engaging. And again, in a completely different time period. Then, yes, it's the ancient year, but we also do some other pieces. We like to do The Little Princess. Where the Red Fern Grows tends to be incredibly engaging, as far as one of these stories where a student can picture really, really wanting something, and the process of investing, and that's not always easy, and that there's a process that has a great deal of reward and a great deal of challenge. We'll see about the Winslow Boys. Sometimes, it's one of those feel out the class. The first 2 lives of Lucas Kasha was something that I introduced, I want to say last year, but I guess now we're talking 3 years ago. Because it's just one of these most really intense adventure books that at the same time sees a main character grow in a way that is very, very accessible for students, right? So I thought students would like it, and it wound up as the year favorite. I think it might have been a year favorite tied with The Little Princess. But it was one of the favorites, if it's not the favorite. So we will likely include that again since it was so popular. But that, and it is set in a sort of fictionalized Persian-ish time period, not ancient Persia, but yeah, definitely old Persia time frame. So that's what we're looking forward to, and I love these books. I know them very well, and I think that it's going to be a great year.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. And let's see where we are. I've got a few minutes. So I've got 4 minutes to share with you what I've got in store for junior high and high school. So let's take a look at that. Here we go. Junior high. These are all the very likely books, but of course, there are often some changes. I like Edith Hamilton's mythology as a core mythology text, but sometimes, usually I start the year with that. I might change it up. I'm not sure yet, and start with something that's more plot-driven rather than episodes. The Odyssey. We'll read Robert Fagel's translation of the Odyssey. And we'll have a couple of plays. You know what? I like Sophocles a lot for junior high students. So I've got 2 Sophocles plays on here. One is one that you'd expect to see, Antigone, about a princess who defies a king. And so standing up to authority for what you think is right. And then another one, which I taught 3 years ago and was really pleasantly surprised by the theme. And I think it's such a perfect junior high book. It's a story of what do you value more? Do you value gaining glory at the cost of your self-esteem and self-respect, or do you value your self-respect over gaining glory? So that's the theme, and it's a story of so it's an intriguing story, but with the junior high students, always we're looking for themes that they might be able to connect to their lives. This one, I love teaching the Browning version, because the way I describe it to my students is this is about a depressed teacher, and you're going to love it. And not because they're a depressed teacher, but because this is a story about looking past the kind of like To Kill a Mockingbird, looking past the presumptions that you have about the people you have, around you, the labels you put on them, and seeing their humanity. And that's something that's, as I remember at 13 years old, I'm trying to understand who I am and which group do I belong to. Am I a jock? Am I a part of the alternative crowd? Am I a nerd? What am I? Or is there something else besides thinking about which group do you belong to? The big novel that we'd read is Victor Hugo's 93, set during the French Revolution, and a similar kind of conflict as with Antigone, morality versus society's laws. And then I've got Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw, another one about personal identity and what does it mean to be the person you are. So quick look at all the books. And of course, we'll have the writing workshop. And high school. Okay, make decisions. A lot of these we will read, but I might shift some things around. I'll point out the ones that are definites. Well, actually, they're all definites. What am I saying? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus. So we're gonna do both literature that we're gonna understand and have clarity on, and literature that's going to be a little bit harder to get into, like the first playwright, Aeschylus. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which was really fun to read 3 years ago. That's something later on in the year when there are just fragments from the Epic of Gilgamesh, but when we have the attitude, okay, we're accepting the fact that this is something that's archaic, it's kind of fun to read. The Iliad. I think we're going to dive into the Iliad. I've taught it before, and it's fun to read. We'll skip certain parts, like where they describe every single ship in the Greek Navy, but there's a lot of string of ideas here about overreacting to, or the rage that you might feel at the world and how you handle that. So you got that in the Iliad, you got that in Medea, you got that in Frankenstein, and got another one here that I just read, and I'm pretty intrigued about including it. It's a late 19th, early 20th century novel called Gunnar's Daughter, by a Norwegian female author, Sigrid Undset, and it's her version of a Norse myth, and it's intense, and I think it will be something that will be intriguing. Others I have on here. Now, the big novel, because I got to have a big tome for junior high and high school students every year, Crime and Punishment. I don't know if my students from 3 years ago are happy. Yeah. It's something that's challenging to get into, and dark and rewarding. How do I sum it up real quick? It is, how do you, when do you take ideas too far? I think at this age, high school students, you're testing out different ideas. I know I did. I was like, oh, what is it? What's communism? What are these different ideas I'm encountering? What does it mean to live out those ideas? And Crime and Punishment is about exploring those ideas. Okay. I like Crime and Punishment too. And yes, Ayn Rand again. I love teaching Ayn Rand. And Ayn Rand, the Anthem, it's a short novella, and I think that's probably the one that we'll start with. It's because it's so connected to ancient mythology. And that's why I've got Prometheus Bound and Ayn Rand paired there together. Let's see, did I miss anything? Sophocles, gotta throw in Sophocles, Ajax. No, not Atlas Shrugged. I think that's more like a college. Yeah, Anthem is super short. It's Atlas Shrugged is what, 1,400 pages long, and it's very philosophical. And I think my general feeling is you got to get a lot of more works of literature and more ideas and more philosophy. But if you want to read on your own, go for it. Go for it. And I'll be glad to have a conversation about it. Okay. Of course, this will be seminar style, and even more so, I'll be exploring things. Oh, I got this one, Paragorio, in there. Another story about are you going to be moral, or are you going to be successful? A little bit like Philoctetes. Okay, so, real quick there. I think, I'm 4 minutes over. But I just want to give an indication of another course that I'm going to be offering, an art history course to high school students. And this will be my version of straight art history. So not art appreciation, where we're looking at the stories and connecting the stories to your life. This will be, let's look at the art and understand why the artist created that. It's something that with high school students with literature that we kind of get into after we get the theme and we personally connect to a novel. Then we often look at the artist's life and see how their ideas influence their literature. So the art history course is, let's look at the artist or their culture, if we're looking back to ancient Greece or something where we don't know the artist, and how that shaped the art. So this is probably the most philosophical that I'd get in any of the classes I give. Yeah, and Irina, I just skipped over I have it written there. I just skipped over, but yes, there will be a junior high art appreciation class that's offered. And just to differentiate between that and the high school art history, the art history class for high school students is separate from the literature class. So you could take the art history class by itself. The art appreciation class for junior high students is integrated with the literature. So we will be doing artworks that are not illustrations of the books, but are thematically connected, and that we'll be constantly thinking about how that artwork reminds us of a particular scene or a particular moment. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, here's an overall look at the schedule. And you'll notice that I'll go through and give you the times that are set, but a lot of these times are not set. And that I want to, if you haven't filled out that survey that I sent out, this will be your opportunity to kind of, give your feedback on what is a time that would work for you. So I'm just going to quickly underline the times that are set. So the times that are set: the upper elementary literature, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at that time, that's set. I could be convinced about the elementary art appreciation. The junior high literature is set. And then the rest of it kind of set, but not quite set. So lower elementary literature, probably at that time. Elementary art appreciation, probably at that time. Upper elementary writing workshop, probably at that time. Junior high writing workshop, probably. High school, I've got 2 times offered. And I want to bring that up because I'm thinking I might try to have 2 sessions, but I also want to see what session works best. So that's why I'll get hopefully a lot of survey responses, or if you want to email me directly and let me know what time works best. Because I'll start by offering 1 and then maybe offering 2 and then having fewer students in each. Right now we've got 10 students. Sometimes, between about 8 show up per class, 8 between. But if we had something smaller and maybe split that up, that would be great. I know a lot of them are going to be graduating, so we'll see. Okay. It is 10:53 on the East Coast, but my caffeine is still working. So I'm I'm sticking around for questions. If you have questions about anything. And I gotta find my pointer. Where's my pointer? What is TR? Oh, Tuesday, Thursday. Is that what I have there? Yeah, Tuesday, Thursday. Thanks. It's the Travers time, actually. TR is for Travers. Travers time. Oh. Are there any parents here that are interested in summer programs? Summer camps, summer book clubs? I'm curious, are you guys all looking forward to having in-person things for your kids this summer? Is that the main focus? Let's find baseball teams to play with. Let's find outdoor summer camps. Is that the main thing? Or are you also looking for virtual stuff? Okay. Oh, you need the literature and art too. Yeah. And that's got to be virtual. That's got to be virtual. One thing I've been thinking about is, I don't know if any families would be interested in this, is to offer a pre-field trip class. So if you're in a particular city and there's an art museum there, I teach here top 5 artworks at the Cantor Art Center at Stanford. Here are top 5 artworks at the LA County Museum, something like that. That's something I'm considering for the summer. But here are some other things that we're considering. And I'm gonna clear all that. I've got a lot of drawing here. A few other things that we're considering. Week-long elementary art appreciation and creative writing camp. So that might be something that Tonya and I do together. And I'm speaking for her. But that might be something that we do art appreciation first, and then do a writing activity based on the art appreciation that we just did. Upper Elementary Book Club. So one thing that it's been a really nice, that's kind of produced, is that the upper elementary kids, hey George is my cat, have started a book club that Tonya and Rachel have facilitated. And if that's something that wants to go forward, I think that's a wonderful idea. Similarly, a lower elementary book club. I've got here a 2-week junior high art history, art creation camp, because I'm starting to see art history is very tied to art creation. So if we're studying ancient Egyptian art, where all the art is meant to cast a magical spell to get you what you want in the afterlife, so we'll make something that will cast a magical spell to get you what you want forever and ever, something like that. But that's what I've been doing a lot of work right now on art history stuff, as you might be able to tell. And then a high school book club. I don't know. This might be something, somebody, was it Kira, that you thought, hey, what about Atlas Shrugged next year? If there are students who want to get together infrequently to discuss a book, that's something that we could do. Okay, I'm looking at questions. How would book club work? Weekly meetings, how long for each session? I think probably that would be a little bit different for each grade level. I think that's still in the works. Tonya, Rachel, or Tonya, do you have any thoughts? I know you're especially interested in possibly doing this. Any initial thoughts, or is that still in progress?
I think it would be helpful to talk to the parents that are interested in the different levels, and just kind of get an idea. Do we want to do like a every day for a week or two kind of club? Because everybody has things to do during the summer. Is that what we want? Or something once or twice a week for a month? So I think if we have a time and books, then we can probably work together and try to figure out what we want to do.
Got it. So it'd be like, reach out or those people that are interested, those families that are interested, you get them in an email chain, and then you kind of discuss what the best strategy might be.
Yeah, the upper elementary one, right now is every 2 weeks, and it's 5 chapters. So it's not a huge intense time commitment,
Mhm.
but it also is mostly student led. So that's kind of exciting.
Okay. And Maria, I'm putting that high school book list there up again for you. Okay. And if there's a high school book club, I'd say I'll set up the Zoom meeting. I might show up with my coffee, but the students basically lead things. So yeah, I don't know if I'd even charge for it. I don't know. Okay. And Kathy, you're thinking once a week for a book club or at least a month, preferably longer through the summer. And Kathy, what level are you thinking of for that? Is that elementary or high school? And all. Okay. All. Mm-hmm. You like the once a week book club for elementary, says Sean? All right. Any final questions before I turn into a pumpkin? It's way past my bedtime and I've had too much coffee. No, it's not past my bedtime. I'm usually routinely up late. Okay. Okay. You'll get information about registration soon. I'll give you a couple bit of a heads up there. There will be a price rise, but there will be a discount for returning families. So there won't be as much of a price rise for returning families. I think what I'm imagining is like a $10 price rise, but for returning families, $5. And there will be a period of time for returning families to register before anybody else. And so imagine like for the next couple of weeks, and then after I get more survey responses for times and we firm up those times for the classes, then I'll send out registration links for those particular times, and then you'll be able to register. And after a period of time, like 10 days for you, 2 weeks for you to register, then I'll make the registration public. But I'll have more information all about that later on. Okay. Any concerns? Any more questions? Any more tributes? Yeah, I got tributes. Rachel, this is 4th year. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're going into your 5th year. Tonya, your first stab at online teaching, and now you're going to get even more into it. Wonderful. And a shout out to Steve out there, who is the one who who makes sure the classes run on time, because if I were up to it, I would not be handling that well. All right. Glad Trevor left Les Mis. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Good night. Send me emails if you have questions. Still waving? I'm going to get tired here. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop the recording. Okay.